This is semi-appropriations, and we're continuing our work on the FY24 budget, and we are on page 98 of the bill that's passed by the House, and it's the Region and Pilot Program.
And that's the language that has the reporting back from the pilot program. And so that program's on hold. I mean, these sections are on hold until you revisit the money as far as where you ended yesterday. 324 is the crisis fuel authorization.
That is to allow the cash in those two programs.
So that's something you do every year?
325, this is.
It started so long ago, Howard Dean was governor. Just to give you some historical perspective.
So long ago, and it feels like
So, thanks here. 325.
And we specified the amounts in OEO out basically for the homelessness. This number actually should have been adjusted upward according to the House moved some money into it. It should have been adjusted upward to reflect the House number, which is 18.776. And we'll see that when we walk through the base money.
So we need to just hold this.
It's just the dollar amount.
Yeah.
And the dollar amount will stay open until you make your base decisions.
So it's 18.7.
18.776 change.
So we're holding.
And then sub B at the top of page 99, that's an allocation that goes out to community organizations for financial coaching. $325.1 Child Care Facilities Financing Program.
It's repealed.
Yeah, it's a repeal. It's just a funny place for it, it feels like, locationally.
Well,
It feels like it's an OEO.
It belongs in a better place, fine, but I gathered
Yeah.
it's being repealed. And I mean, we've got our own childcare bill with the, so I think we'll agree with the repeal, it's just maybe it needs to.
Maybe it needs to go where childcare is.
And this other authorization for replacement or repair, well, I think that's pretty standard as well.
And then the system of care plan, now we're into fail. System of care plan, it's a bump up of the date from January to February here. Yeah.
So they changed, and then there's just, looks like technical corrections to make sure the right terminology is being referenced in terms of 330.
330, it goes on for several sections.
I see that.
So
Doing that here.
So this
In the
is basically housekeeping that came over with the governor's language recommendation. Was sent to the committee of jurisdiction in the House and reviewed by them and the ledge council folk. And so that brings us all the way up to
It's okay, it's just using the correct terminology for depth guard, area of line, depth line.
I think that brings us all the way up to page 106 to 334.
Just add so much hope to be doing statutory cleanup in the budget, that's my only point.
I think it's there because it came there as a recommendation for the administration and it wasn't claimed to put into some other vehicle. If there's a different vehicle that's
No,
going.
don't even, I'm not asking you to respond. I'm making a statement.
Okay.
Please.
That's not usual.
What? Oh, it's not, well, there's a lot of, yeah, I know. I just think that we're expedient, but it really makes this bill even more cumbersome. But if we needed a statutory cleanup, it seems like that's kind of stuff that we would do through our ledge council, where they go and review statutes and update the terminology, and it comes into a technical corrections bill. Beware of someone bearing boxes.
Well, this is for
celebration of Secretary Palmer,
Uh-huh.
but I wanted to ask you if, when you thought we might be able to.
Celebrate?
Yeah.
Well, I think this committee's pretty flexible. Shall we try 3 o'clock? Is that good?
3 o'clock.
Or 3:15?
3:50.
And then we'll go 3:15 to 3:30. And then
Let me
we'll
just pass that on.
We got double good.
donuts.
Triple good. I knew you liked lemons, so those are.
I know, Ginny.
I know,
Those aren't the almonds. Though.
I know.
Those look like.
Those are the lemons. Those are-
I know they are. God, I just hate a chocolate. I'm like, oh, I gotta get out and start working in my garden. All right, so moving right along.
Page 106.
I wonder if we could just do this, strip it out, and ask Ledge Council when they're doing, because they routinely are doing legislative language cleanup.
I have a bill,
You do?
right, it's a Dale bill. We could take it out, put it on that.
You could,
Yeah. I
We
think
could do that. I'd be fine doing it.
if you would consider doing that, I just would like to, I don't mind, I know, I'm not arguing that it needs to be.
H 171.
but it's Katie or Amaranth, who's the drafter of that,
No, Katie is.
we'll
We'll see, we'll see if we
recut
can-
those sections and send them over and say.
Yeah.
Senator Lyons
Yeah.
is saying include them in
And
this.
we're working on it.
And then they're still here in the House, if they're, the House version, if that doesn't go through in the end or something.
It'll be fine.
It just, it helps.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great, thank you. Glad you've got a bill.
Is that 5 pages?
Yes, we're getting up to page 106 and we are, now we're gonna do a rate study for the TBI population.
And nursing homes down below.
Oh.
On the rate setting. So the TBI is a rate study, 334 and 334.1 is a change in the minimum vacancy in the rate setting for nursing homes.
Well, I don't have a problem with setting the, because of staffing, they have a terrible time.
Yeah.
They can't get, and
They can't
I think
necessarily fill their
they
beds.
can't fill the beds, we know, and they're backing up in hospitals. But in terms of another rate study, we don't need to, you know, we can, they can tell us what an increase would be. And the other part is, and this is on for both DS services and TBI, both. So I think this is the kind of thing, if you wanted to do an increase, you can ask, if you did an increase of X%, what would it cost? So I think consistent with our past decisions.
Did somebody raise off his work because he can't fund it to a study?
Did it get put on the board?
Well, Senator
It's just that-
wanted it on there,
I
yes.
don't think it got a second.
Oh,
But I think in terms of the occupancy, that really is an issue, particularly with staffing in this environment. So I think right now, maybe the occupancy is 90%. It's very high.
I think it's 90% right now that rate setting has to use.
So I think, is this shall report on the budgetary impact, and this is another report.
Yeah, it doesn't actually. It's a report back on the impacts of it. So I mean, there's extraordinary need in the nursing home, so maybe you need less of that if you lower the.
I understand, yeah, I understand. This is a little bit different, this has to do with the threshold, so I think maybe we aren't totally pure, so let's go okay with that one. Okay, talk about purity, here comes Senator Sears on E335.
My goodness,
Okay.
Somebody
I
left you.
don't have a desk.
No, you don't, I realize. No,
Right, we've got some.
You didn't have much of one to begin with.
no,
No.
it's getting, you took
Even less.
encroachment, I think this is called encroachment.
Yeah, I know.
All right.
Senator Westman has been pushing those papers
right towards
over to
you.
me.
I'm trying to be helpful.
Well, that's not mine.
All right, so this is Senator Sears, your entrance is perfect. E335, out-of-state beds appropriations, unexpected funds.
So, 335 is the language we've had in for a few years, but when we go through the base budget, you will see that the House, in consultation with the Department of Corrections, has permanently moved about $900,000 from the out-of-state bed line to the Justice Reinvestment 2 line. So they've moved, instead of the way we've been doing it, sort of see if there's one-time money, and then decide what to do with the one-time money.
What section are we on?
You're
Page
what,
107.
Well, I've made progress.
You did. That's what happens when you're not here. 107.
Can't make progress, man.
So, this is actually moving it to the base.
So, that's what 335.1 is speaking to, is that movement in the base. And so with that movement in the base, the administration is saying 335 shouldn't be in here for the close of the next year, because we permanently moved money in the base in '24. And so that's the budget process would continue to look at the base of out-of-state beds, and the option to move money permanently in the base is always available to the committee. We've been doing it for the past 2 or 3 years. Is this, if there's money at the end of the year, Joint Justice Oversight could look at and say what it could be used
So
for.
because we moved it into the base, what you're saying is, and the administration saying A needs to be
So
deleted.
335 can be deleted, and 335.1 is the new language that speaks to that base movement.
All right, so that's what I'm saying, 335,
Yeah.
A and B goes out, because it's not,
Yeah.
it's irrelevant now that we're taking it and moving the money and creating that base.
Yeah.
Okay,
We permanently increasing JR2.
okay, which we had talked about, we have to have a base. And then A on page 108. To the extent,
And then this language is, the operative piece of this language is that actually, if there is out-of-state bed surplus, it would simply revert to the general fund. At the end, and this was, we're talking about the end of '24, so we're talking about a year from now.
okay, just this one time,
Yes.
and then, but the,
But the
900 will
900,000
stay
is
in the
permanently
base.
stays in the JR2 base.
okay, so we'll close that out.
I'm okay with that.
Correctional services, this is for supplemental facility payments to
This is
Newport.
what they got for hosting. Correct. So,
And I think we made a deal, so we have to honor it.
yeah, we didn't make the deal.
Well,
But we
Bobby
paid for
Starr
it.
and Saluzzi made it.
There's stuff.
shall we send the bill to him?
At least half.
Home detention, this is
Well, I
again,
never got asked about this, so I'm surprised to see it in here.
so there's passive electronic monitoring.
Yeah, I'd like to. speak
So
to the
there's
committee.
several pages of until page,
And they're gonna do a report on page 109.
Of course, yeah.
so 108 to 113, these are all correctional policy pieces.
Is there a bill you could put this on?
Probably.
I don't know, we can leave it here, but I'm just, it's adding use of passive electronic monitoring. I don't know if you
Why
wanna,
don't I ask Peggy to schedule some time with the corrections department on all
anything,
of this section.
all right. Supervision, absconding,
Yeah.
listed crimes, this is really,
Yeah, why bother having this?
And
this,
this is language that was recommended by judiciary or institutions
in the
in
house.
the House.
Why
To go in the
don't-
budget.
Why is it in the?
You know, I mean, when you're getting into definition of absconding and technical violations.
No, what we can
and-
do is we can add it to the miscellaneous judiciary bill.
Well, that's what
Back to us.
All right, is
Since
it
the
coming
House has
back,
already approved it,
you know?
but I need to, how far does it go?
Goes to 113.
113. I'm gonna suggest we look and see if there's another vehicle that's more appropriate to make these kinds of, and give you an opportunity to review them.
Well, yeah,
Your judiciary committee.
do this stuff.
And if you
Would
take them
you-
out, they're still in the House bill.
Can you
budget
send-
lines.
Me just copies of these sections, please? You can do it electronically. Have it on, then I'll send it to
Commissioner Devlin.
Commissioner Dunn and Peggy and set up some time.
Or you could send it on behalf of Senator Sanders. Why don't you do that?
Why don't you do that? Send it to Peggy Delaney and Commissioner and tell them we're gonna set up time to hear from them next week.
It's gonna be early. It's gonna be early next.
No, we're gonna take it out.
Oh, we're taking it out.
We're
Okay.
taking it out, so it can be anytime.
All right. Okay. And then if it's a problem, we can always add it in.
Yeah.
Because the House
if
has got it, but-
becomes- Yeah, but I'd rather add it to a judiciary.
Well,
bill.
I don't want to get, I'm really concerned about the precedent of using the budget for as much statutory cleanup or whatever.
I mean, we've had arguments about electronic monitoring. God, how far does that go back?
So we're going to,
I mean,
we're going to
at least
remove
10 years.
section 338.1 and through through absconding to the top of 113.
Yeah, we don't need to, we keep E338 in. That's the payment. to-
Yes, that's what, starting with 338.1.
It's actually only two sections, it's just very long,
Yeah,
statutory.
that goes through the top
That's
to 113
right.
is going to be out. Okay. Now,
They can always argue for it to be in if we don't do it.
all right, yeah,
I think it's better if we get testimony on it.
well, I think you should. And if there's another bill more appropriate to make these.
There's a couple of bills that are coming back from the House that I could add them to since I was put this in. I don't
Jenny's
think
got the next section.
Yeah, this one.
Maybe other bills in here for all I know.
Oh, we'll see as we go through.
On page 113, section E345, hospital system transformation planning.
And this is a conversation that Representative Houghton and I had with the Secretary of AHS and the Chair of the United Care Board. There it is, the surprise is there. Certainly something that's acceptable. Not much, so we could leave it in.
Leave it in.
Yeah.
So it will move the bill, because it's actually, the AHS is the lead on this, and it's not a Fremont Care Board, so it'll move up to E300.
This is a report again.
It's an update.
Has it started?
Well, they are working on it, yes, and they're going to be working on it with,
So
a few
if they're
hospitals.
working on it, this looks familiar. In terms of up to 4 hospitals and stuff. Aren't we, isn't this duplicating a language that?
No,
we
no,
are-
it's not. It's
No?
actually not. It is actually what I consider to be a really great step forward in having hospitals work with both the AHS and Fremont Care Board to look at sort of their financial sustainability and the community needs discussion.
Because all they have to do, because that community needs assessment to keep their tax exempt status.
They will.
So you want to keep this, but it's not an update then if it hasn't started.
And they're gonna, I think they're gonna be, they're in discussion, but they're gonna really drill down into it over the summer.
So we don't have anything that we've passed in the previously that sets this effort in motion.
What we have is Act 167, but what we don't have is this update from Fremont Care Board and AHS working collaboratively with hospitals to bring us back this information. So I think it's an important, piece of
So we will keep
You're
it.
gonna leave it in.
We'll leave it in. I just wanted to make sure that this wasn't really a second statement of something that we already had underway.
It's not.
Okay. And I assume that, well, we didn't hear from AHS or the Green Up Care Award, so,
But down there on line 14, it says something about process set forth in 2022 and the resolve back 167.
Andrew,
This is greater.
somebody from IT to come down.
This is-
I can't get into my email.
Allowing for that. Yeah, they're working with up to 4 hospitals. I know, this is Act 167, and this is more of a global activity in 167. What's in here is some discrete work with up to 4 hospitals, which is.
so is it
it's on the
true
ground.
to say then that last year, 2022?
Yeah.
We had passed a bill that would initiate this data analysis and community engagement process. This language builds on that bill.
Exactly.
Okay, all right, so why don't, maybe that's what I'm thinking about
Yeah.
now.
It's
So,
it's a next step, and it's work that's going on, and it's important for
believe
us
you.
to hear back.
I believe you. I put okay. Now that we've remembered what we did, more what we did last year, so that it's not a duplication, it's additive, I guess would be it. Okay, now we're at E500. Finance administration,
So 500 is, this speaks to the global grant funds that flow through the agency, through the,
IEP,
what we call special ed Medicaid.
what are you looking at?
We're paying for this sales tax revenue from cannabis and taking out the after-school and summer special.
No, that's next.
We have to-
But that's the next one.
Doesn't sales tax already go to the after school?
Yes, it does. Through the ed fund. It goes through the ed fund and flows specifically to after school. The excise tax, a portion of it is allocated to prevention efforts at the Department of Health.
Is it just moving it to a special fund? Is that right?
Well, why don't we, I wanna, 500 seems like that's pretty stock. I'm gonna close that out. So let's move down to after school. Stephanie, can you explain here?
So that's what this would do. It would move you have a line item in the ed fund of the revenue of sales tax that we calculate that is cannabis related based on the excess tax experience. And then this would actually transfer that amount into a new special fund as it's written here.
But it doesn't additionally commit any of the,
Yeah, it goes on the next page,
I'm just-
500,000 for administrative.
okay,
No way.
I'm
On
just,
115, that's what
No
it
way, I'm
says.
not in favor of that.
It's
So we
very-
have administrative costs from the Cannabis Control Board. Now we're gonna have administrative costs to spend the money.
now,
That's.
The other option is to
I won't use the
actually
term. I'm not
fund
gonna use it.
directly out of the ed fund. To take the same amount that you count, that is the revenue from the cannabis sales tax, not the excise tax, and have it be a line item in the education fund, whether that is, what's, a lot of after-school money flows through DCF as opposed to through AOE. And so I think that's probably one of the reasons they thought of doing it through the special fund, but the coordination between the two agencies on the after-school.
So Bruce,
so I'm trying to clarify.
did this come from the agency, administration? It did.
Yeah, this language came from us.
It did come.
So
Thank you.
currently, there's 30% that's dedicated.
So that's on the excise tax. So, and it's 30% of the excise tax. We have a 2-year period because of the deficit of the fees
Mhm.
in cannabis. where it's 30% of the direct app that's coming after we pay for the full cost of the cannabis control board on the excise tax. That's dedicated to prevention.
That
And then goes to
30%.
the Department of Health.
Prevention.
And the sales tax is entirely dedicated to
The
after
sales,
school.
all of the sales tax that's cannabis related, sales
So-
tax goes in the ed fund,
Okay,
is to get dedicated to after school.
and then just to finish
You
my
put that
question,
in your bill.
so just,
Well, we gave it to the after-school programs, but what we've got now,
can I
I
just
kind of
want
wish
to
I had
finish.
voted for the bill.
Well,
I just want to clarify. So this 500,000 comes out of the already articulated percentages, not the remaining 70% of the excise that is currently undedicated.
Yeah, this has nothing to do with the excise. This is all sales tax.
Okay. So this is just taking saying that $500,000 out of the
The amount for after school
could go to them.
could be
Okay.
through administration.
And that's different. Then that sounds fine to me because it's
well,
using.
it's getting programs set up and
Yeah.
overseen.
I thought it was an
Takes some
additional 500.
Manpower, so it's out of the cannabis-related sales tax money that there's recognition that to start these programs up and to administer them needs some staffing and resources. And so it's saying out of whatever that amount might be, like 500,000 can be used for the cost of supporting these programs and technical assistance to communities, including subcontracts. That's here. to
I guess
support grants,
most of it.
which does take time to grant and do all that administrative work that's associated with it.
And you would have, this is entirely in the agency of education. There's not is there coordination with CDD after school at all?
Well, on the advisory committee, there are.
But when it says agency, on page 115, that's all AOB for administrative costs.
So we have another advisory committee.
There's an existing.
But can I ask a question about this? Is this the same committee that's currently working in the governor's office for the after-school program? Or is this different?
No, this would be a new committee.
Well, why don't we use an existing one? If the membership looks good,
The existing one has a house member.
well,
Doesn't have it. It's all.
This is all.
It's
Administrative branch.
This is a new one.
All
Secretaries and.
I'm saying the existing one, the one that's working, the
Yeah.
task force is an operational.
I mean, but, so the question is, this is going to include programs and grants at the local level. There aren't any real local people, that's all.
the other thing that I'm wondering, when we set up after-school programs, we've got to realize that once we set them up, that's an ongoing obligation. We cannot throw out a grant and say every year you apply to see if your program, we've got to provide some stability and assurances of ongoing funding. So I just don't know how to express that any better, but if you put an after-school program in place, there needs to be assurances of continuity. So we're not talking about competitive annual grants here, or is that the vision? I mean, having all these people decide whether you need an after-school program and whether you meet the criteria makes me a little worried that we might be replicating the very problem that I've been concerned about, and that is you start something up and then you say, oh, well, we're going to go fund another community or something and leave that other program unfunded. That's my concern. And the other is, why do we need another advisory committee when this seems to be all in the area of prevention, and why don't we, and I'm not answering it, Nat, I think we should, I don't think we can litigate this right now, but I do think perhaps we need to have some discussion about this.
I think that,
And I might ask you to do that.
okay, but so it also doesn't indicate what you're saying, and that is some coordinated system of after-school programming that's ongoing without having the grant. So that's the question.
Right.
And
This is
Kendall
a
Smith,
grant.
I think, is very much committed to this.
She's appointed in the
Yes,
administration.
so it would be great if she could just
Well,
comment.
then, maybe she could answer the questions.
Yeah.
Why can't we use an existing advisory? We've got so many people advising us.
Yeah.
It's so confusing. For every pot of money, the more you can have one entity, just like as appropriations, we see everything in state government, it comes here. If you had sort of that omnibus advisory committee in the area of prevention, and then you could really get a better handle on where all the investments are being made and to what funding streams. And it deals with this sometimes disjuncture or not the optimum use of all the available resources. So if you could have,
You asked a question, but is this to get programs started or is this ongoing?
500.
both,
Then,
the money is ongoing. I mean,
Well-
for ongoing programs. What's the estimate
It's-
from,
It's on the bottom of your canvas sheet. That's
This-
where the ed fund is.
Is this ongoing or is it one time?
No, this is ongoing.
The program's ongoing, but it's the
The
500,000.
500, at that amount might not be.
Wait, Bob,
That's what I mean.
That's for 1 year.
I guess the administration.
So this is set up as a one-time infusion. There's
So
no,
this is session law,
yeah,
so this would be,
here we are.
it's at the bottom of that sheet is the.
All right,
sales tax.
after school, which is cannabis in, after school in 25, well, 24, between what we have in 23 and 24 is going to be about 6 million. In 25, the estimated revenue for the cannabis portion of the sales tax in the ed fund is 6.1, almost 6.2 million. And that's an ongoing revenue stream from that program. So, so what we have is money that would support after-school programs, ongoing. The question means, I would think you still need to have some ongoing administrative capacity to be administering over $6 million or close to $6 million of grants.
And then having the programs that get established initially continue. There may be other funds available for grants that, you know. that are-
they want to expand the program into other areas. And
Well,
they
that's-
want
They
this
use-
crew to figure out, guidance in what the area of expansion.
All right, committee, I'm gonna come back and just see if we can, so what we're talking about is ongoing revenue that is being generated as a result of the cannabis legislation that has been passed. And it'll, so the 6 million is something new that is coming in. And this is attempting to say, it's gonna take some money to administer it. Now, Rich and then Phil, I guess, and then Bobby.
I'm fine. I would just say at this point, I think this needs to be looked at by Health and Welfare and then come back, because I don't think we can do this.
Well, what about education? They do the
It's
after
a-
school program.
I think it's both. But I think it would be important to hear from Kendall Smith, who has been championing this. And also, I know Human Services.
So let me suggest that you do that offline
I can do it.
and have that conversation, report back to us in
Yeah.
terms of whether there's an existing group that we could utilize. And
The other suggestion, this sets up a new special fund, and
Yes,
the money flows into the ed fund and flows through the Agency of Education. So I think you could create a new line of education fund spending for after school programs and not create a new special fund. It's a new ed fund line to me. And then you would see every year in the budget, this much for personal services for administering and this much for grants. And it would,
And this does allow administrative money. The other money in the ed fund, we cannot, administrative money is not a permissible use for agency of education. So, but this
is clearly, it's for this piece, and so we probably want to, technically make sure that that's very clear. I think it was clear in the underlying cannabis legislation, but that line item instead.
a special fund within a special fund.
Yeah, I think you can just be education fund appropriation
I think that sounds reasonable, and it would.
in a new line item of
That's right.
Department of Education or Education, State of Education,
But,
after school.
So, Ginny, if you would see why we need to have another, or the
Yeah,
extent to
yeah.
which,
And the
and the-
special fund.
and, no, the special fund, we're saying we don't need,
We don't
it'll,
need it,
it'll be
okay.
a separate line on the education fund, because that's where the money is ultimately going.
There's also the question about the extent of this after-school programs, because it includes summer, over summer.
And it also includes after school that has been funded through DCF.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
there's some need to bring that all
right.
together. But I don't think,
Okay.
I think just if you could have a meeting with Kendall and, then just report back. I don't think it requires full committee testimony or anything.
No.
Yeah, okay. All right, so now we've got the annual budgeting of the sales and use tax.
And this is amending the cannabis bill on reporting outcomes on grants made for after school. And you see the specifics of what they're asking for in that report.
It says a plan to aim to data.
The underlying piece is what's new, what's being amended.
I know, and report outcomes data on the grants. Outcomes for what? I mean, outcomes for the number of programs set up to, or outcomes of kids? Well, I guess, which is the next
More of an
one.
output than an outcome.
Yeah, it seems to me the next one should report on the number of program slots and hours. I'm not sure what it means by outcomes data on the grants. I don't know what that language means. It seems the next sentence is good. The agency will report on the number of program slots, hours, geographical, what is known about costs, and shall be inclusive of 21C program. Could anybody tell us what 21C is? Do you know, Mel, from your days on ed, or
21st century, I think that,
it's
Oh,
a 21st century?
yeah.
21st century programming.
And I don't know,
I'm not familiar with 21st century program. 21st century classroom and design, I'm familiar with, but
You know what
This is the context of
21C is?
it's 21st century.
I think it's
Okay.
21st century. That's what I,
We think, but, is this your language too?
yes, it is.
Well, I think maybe that could be part of your discussion too.
Oh, thanks a lot. Okay.
Well, I don't know what it
No,
means
I
on,
can ask.
outcomes data on the grants. It seems like the grants are what are funding the number of program slots, et cetera. I don't see that adds much, but, I'm gonna, see if you and Kendall can get together and.
For the committee, for Kendall, the goal is for sustainable programs. These grants are not intended to operate programs on that. To help to Senator Westman's point, to help set up the programs, go through the administrative stuff. But the goal is that ongoing expenses will be met in some other way, and that'll be part of the scoring process for the grants. Do they have a sustainable program?
Because I don't want
How can you have a sustainable program without using the revenues? What you're saying is we're gonna start the program up and then say to the schools, you figure out how to fund them in the future?
I think a funding mechanism would be part of the, correct. I think that's,
It's called universal after school, and the cannabis money is not enough to make them universal. So the cannabis money is more of a starting,
So we could start them up and shut them down potentially?
or start them up and have them be funded, potentially on local education or.
Yeah, oh.
That's part of the whole question, the whole thing.
All right, so
How do you make it sustainable?
I guess that's the question.
Yeah,
And
the current after-school program, that's basically, the grants that they're giving are saying, we'll give you this grant, and we'll give it to you for 5 years, but you need to be self-sustaining.
I know.
what does self-sustaining, come back and make a general fund request?
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's
Or
the effort.
Or categorical education fund request.
It seems like $6 million a year to start up programs and say you're on your own.
Well, it kind of cycles
But the
through.
money's gonna keep coming in.
Yeah.
I know.
So why would the programs just continue?
I don't know, that's what they're saying, that's not the case, this is just to help them get started up and develop a plan to become self-financing,
No,
which,
I mean,
that's,
That's what they do now.
yeah, I mean, most of our programs are self-financed, if not all.
well, the DCF funding for after-school programs is only to help them get started and time limited.
It's also used for subsidies for families and the like. So anyway, we can have greater conversations on it. I just thought the committee should know that this is not intended to be ongoing expenses for all these programs.
Madam Chair.
Okay, well, I guess we'll